Today we're going to talk about the Chaco tortoise, not real common in collections in the United States. I breed a number of rare species, but the Chaco tortoise is more similar to some of the Mediterranean species in its care and maintenance, and it's actually most closely related to the Galapagos tortoise. The Chaco tortoise is native to Argentina, Bolivia, and Paraguay. There's only one recognized species, though there used to be 3. If you read Fritz's abstract, you'll see that they conclude that there's only one species. I maintain a group of Chaco tortoises at my home that's located in Phoenix, Arizona, which is in the Sonoran Desert. Our temperature chart, you have to pause it if you really want to see it, and for those outside the U.S., I also put it in Celsius. I guess the key issue here is that it's probably both hotter and colder than they experience in their natural range. The heat's no problem, but the cold, freezing temperatures can be an issue. I maintain my core group of adults outside year-round without any supplemental heat. I have started bringing in some of my subadults during the coldest part of the winter. While they may reach temperatures slightly below freezing in their natural range, in Phoenix we have more days below freezing than they probably would experience. And I have lost some of my subadults when I've left them outside year-round, but my adult group does quite well, hibernating in the winter. The diet's similar to other tortoises. They'll eat a variety of greens, prickly pear pads, carrots, squash, zucchini, mulberry leaves, hibiscus leaves. And as you check out this enclosure, you'll see it has fountain grass, shady areas, hide box, places where they can escape the sun. And most of the pens have filtered sunlight because of mesquite trees above them. And I also typically put in a water dish of some type. But this is pen for some of the juveniles. You'll see they like to hide in any of the cracks or crevices, including in the block. But don't just stick your hand in there to get them, because you'll see other things like to hide in that block as well, such as this diamondback rattlesnake. One of the more difficult challenges with Chacos is sexing them, determining males and females. If you don't have an old mature adult, they can look very similar. But the male has a more concave shell, and the female has, I guess, a flatter plastron and slightly shorter tail. Let's take a closer look. Is this a male or a female? This is an old, mature animal, so it should be easy to tell. As you turn it over, does that look concaved? Well, you'll see at the rear end of the tortoise, there is a slight depression. And that tail, well, I guess it's a little bigger and thicker. That is a male. So you can see that in a subadult or juvenile, it can be almost impossible to tell the difference. Just the size of this specimen gives away the fact that it's a female. But let's check the plastron. Looks pretty darn flat. Doesn't have that slight depression that the male did. And this female's about ready to lay eggs, so there's a wider gap there, the tail and the anal scutes. And the tail is short and stubby. But again, difficult to tell in juvenile tortoises. Again, females grow bigger than males. Male on the left, female on the right. Male on the left, female on the right, juvenile in the middle. I originally had a larger group of Chaco tortoises, but some animal got into the pen, and I lost a number of them. This diamondback was feeding on a rabbit in the pen, so I relocated it to the desert. This bobcat has a tortoise in its mouth, but it turned out to be an African spurred tortoise. The yard has better security now, as I believe it may have been a neighbor's dog who got into the pen. Typically, the native wildlife doesn't bother the animals. Breeding can occur throughout the summer. The males will follow the females, and then, as is typical with tortoises, will mount the female. There, they're doing it in the water dish. But spraying down the pen helps, as it also helps moisten the ground so tortoises can dig to lay eggs, but also, as you saw those hatchlings, that they can emerge from the ground. I'll talk a little bit more about incubation, but there's where those two tortoises emerged from. I saw the one, looked for where it came from, and then dug out that second tortoise. Eggs are typically laid in the late summer and fall, and then will overwinter, and then hatch in the monsoon seasons in August, September, and will emerge from the ground. This means that the eggs overwinter in the ground prior to hatching. This is a little hatchling, hatched in spring, so it's a couple months old. It's just lived outside here. But doing well. Put it back down so it can eat. Instead, it'll run off. This is that hatchling when I first found it in the spring, and you can see where the yolk sac was absorbed. I can't be certain if it hatched out in the spring or it hatched out in the fall and just overwintered in the pen, and I didn't find it till spring. As I said, typically I find the hatchlings in the late summer or fall. Here's female digging to lay eggs. Let's speed the process up a little bit. You can see she just digs shallow burrow with her short little hind legs, and typically it's after a rain or when there's some moisture in the ground. And on this day, she picked a place that was a little bit dry and not really to her liking. And as you'll see, she won't end up laying at that spot. But they typically lay just a few eggs at a time. Fairly large, almost round eggs. You see here as I put the camera back on her, she goes, "Oh, I'm done, I'm leaving." But that's what the eggs look like. Here she is again the following morning, and you'll see that they like to find a place that has some security or cover. And they typically dig to lay eggs early in the morning. If the eggs are brought inside to incubate, I put them in a plastic shoebox with peat moss. As you'll notice here, they require a diapause, similar to that of spider tortoises or Burmese stars. 1 month at about 80 degrees, and then 2 months in the 60s, and then warm back up, and after a few more months, they will hatch. Hatchlings weigh in at about 28 grams, and the indoor incubation only takes about 5 or 6 months compared with about a full year of leaving them outside. But my hatch rate outdoors is high, and quite honestly, oftentimes I don't see the female dig to lay eggs, so I don't have much of a choice. Hatchlings that I raise indoors, I do similar to all my other hatchling tortoises. Put them inside on tubs with peat moss and grass to cover them. That's the outdoor pen. Their diet's the same as the adults. Different leafy greens, leaves from various plants. I threw this in there just to confuse you. That's actually an African spurred tortoise. You see how similar they look to a Chaco. Well, hatchlings of the two species look nothing alike. When they're about 4 inches, they can look very similar. So don't let someone pass off a sulcata as a Chaco. There's a pair, male on the left, female on the right, and two hatchlings there in the middle. Just a spectacular species to work with. And while mine are somewhat shy, they're in their indoor closure. They can burrow right into the peat moss just as they would in the outdoor enclosure. But while mine are somewhat shy, I see people that work with them more, and they can be quite outgoing and friendly. And hopefully, they'll get more established in the pet trade. Those that were imported from the wild, as the seasons are reversed and didn't acclimate well, and most of them died. When they were imported into the U.S., the young specimens seemed to fare better than the adults. The young ones acclimated more readily. The challenge was that you didn't know what sex you had. But mine do well outdoors year-round. Some of the ones I'm raising up, when they're young, they don't fare as well in the winter weather, and so I'll bring them indoors for a few months in the winter. But I spray down their pens with water during the summer. They lay eggs in the fall. The eggs will overwinter and hatch out the following year in around August or September. Diet similar to others. So that's how I keep Chaco tortoises out here in the Arizona desert. Well, hatchlings aren't often available. When they are, they're generally $800 to $1,000. So hopefully as more become available, prices will go down. But I hope you enjoyed this presentation on Chaco tortoises. Take care.